Welcome to InterPartyConflict, the podcast where we answer your questions so you can have the best tabletop gaming experience possible. My name is Gabe.
And my name is Jeff.
And we're going to answer your questions today. In fact, our very first question actually does come from a listener. I'm gonna read this question before we get into the episode.
Oh, cool.
Zeus and his beard, one of our he submitted some questions to our first couple episodes. He submitted a question that I'm gonna ask right at the beginning. He asks, how's Jeff doing today?
You know, I knew where this was going, and then I lost track of it, and I was like, wait, did he actually? Did he actually submit this question?
He did. Yeah,
oh,
he submitted several questions. And that was
thank you, Mr. and his beard. I'm doing pretty good.
Well, good. I am also doing pretty well.
Yes.
I had last week. I had some issues with iTunes.
Oh.
I put the episodes up on Tuesday like I always do, and it didn't show up on iTunes at all. It was on SoundCloud. It showed up on Stitcher, but it wasn't showing up on iTunes. And it was really frustrating. So, like, I've had some issues with SoundCloud in the past where it wasn't showing up on anything other than SoundCloud. Like, There was some issue with the RSS feed. And in those cases, I just deleted the episode and re-uploaded it. Or rather, I uploaded it a second time. And then once it showed up, I deleted the original.
Gotcha.
So there wouldn't be two of them up. But in this case, I uploaded a second one. Didn't show up on iTunes. So I uploaded a third one. Didn't show up on iTunes. It was like 2 days later if the original file finally showed up. So that's really frustrating because, you know, I try very hard to release this podcast on a strict schedule, especially like the last few weeks. I've been really busy. I'm sure you've been really busy. So we have been working really hard to get the episode out on the same day every time. And so when iTunes goes, and as far as I can tell, it was a problem on iTunes end.
Yeah. When
it doesn't show up for an extra 2 days, I feel like that makes us look bad. I mean, how big of a difference is going to make? I don't know.
Right. I mean, we're available on a few different things. I actually listened to the last episode on YouTube this time.
Oh,
usually
cool.
I go through SoundCloud, but I had the YouTube app all open already. I was like, I'll just listen to it there. So
yeah,
which that worked out fine.
Okay, cool. So I guess it's not the end of the world. It's just, it's frustrating when I do try really hard to stick to a schedule.
Right.
And, something gets in the way of that. But anyway, it's up, and anybody who wants to can check it out. So I guess let's go ahead and get into the episode. So Jeff, I want you to make a caster level check.
Oh, okay. Let's see. I'm a little rusty at spells. Hold on, let me see. Yeah, 3.
When was the last time you played a spellcaster?
It would have had to have been, I guess, technically the Age of Worms campaign.
Oh my goodness, that was a long time. Okay, well, that would explain why you rolled a 3. Is that the die that keeps rolling a 3?
It might be.
Oh my goodness.
This might be the cursed die.
Okay, well, anyway, so you didn't roll very well. What happened was you were trying to cast a teleport spell.
Sure.
You were trying to teleport into the evil wizard's lair, and he has some magical wards up, so you had to make a caster level check in order to get through. Unfortunately, you failed. A mishap happened. Okay. You got teleported to a random location. However, this actually works in your favor because the random location you got teleported to just happens to be a dragon's hoard.
Yay!
All right. Our item this week is submitted by Nicholas P. And I just want to say, I think it's really cool how we've gotten, for the Dragon's Hoard, we've gotten a big range of items. Some items that are really simple. For example, like the stone cutter.
Sure.
Really simple item, but still really cool.
Yeah.
And then we've gotten a lot of other items that are like really have a lot of steps to them, like the Cube of Patience.
Yeah.
This one has a bit to it, so it's more on that side. But, I just want to say thank you to everybody who has submitted items for the Dragon's Hoard, because there's been a lot of variation and some really cool things.
Yeah.
I also... I was going to mention this at the very end when we get to the outro spiel, but I want to give a heartfelt thank you to everybody who has left a review. We don't have a huge listener base,
sure.
But the listener base we have is pretty good, and all the reviews we've gotten have been really, really, really positive, and have just been really, really, really appreciative. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who's left us a review. I'm not going to read any of them or anything. I'm not going to be too self-congratulatory here, but. Just again, thank you to everybody who's left us a review. They've all been really good. And it seems like everybody really likes the Dragon's Hoard segment.
Oh, cool.
So like, I think most of the reviews we've gotten have called that out as their favorite part.
Yeah, I like it.
So yeah, so hopefully this is, everybody appreciates this item too. This item is an item called the Paintbrush of Evil Animation.
Okay.
Once again, is submitted by Nicholas P. This is an average wooden paintbrush, but with strange runes carved into the wood. The paintbrush can be used as a normal paintbrush until you activate its power. To activate the power, the user must bleed onto one of the runes.
Okay.
This is hinted at by some text on the bottom of the paintbrush that says, "As an artist, you must bleed for your work."
Huh.
When it's activated, the runes will glow red and ink will mysteriously appear on the tip. When it activates, it'll have 3 charges and can be activated 3 times per day. The paintbrush can be used with a piece of paper to do its magic. I imagine you could probably paint it on other things too. The user can draw certain things on paper and they will spring from the paper to life, but they will be completely black and white. The things the user can draw are listed below. Number 1, the user can draw a monster with a CR that is equal to 1/4 the party level, and the monster will come to life in a black and white form and will fight for the party until it's killed, or until another monster is drawn, or until 1 day passes, at which point the monster will turn into nothing but a puddle of ink. Nice. Whenever one is drawn, there's a 5% chance the monster will be evil and fight the party.
Okay.
So kind of like Summon Monster, but a little bit different and with a little chance of something bad happening. Yeah. Number 2, the user can draw pieces of furniture and similar objects. These objects will be solid, but will be wet and slightly sticky, which I think is a nice touch.
Yeah, I like that.
However, there will be a 5% chance that the furniture or object will be evil and animated, and it will then attack the party.
Okay.
And then number 3, the user can draw a short sword, mace, or hand axe that will work as normal, but will last 1 day or until they draw another weapon. However,
oh God,
there is a 5% chance that the weapon will be corrupted, and any damage dealt with it will actually heal the enemy.
Okay.
So that's interesting. I wonder if there's a way to abuse that, like if you see that it's healing the enemy, if you can just start, stabbing yourself with it or whatever. I don't know.
Sure.
And that says also, whenever the item is activated, out from the tip will spring a small black and white imp-like and cartoon-looking creature who will introduce themselves as Bendy. Bendy will speak in a high-pitched, happy-sounding voice. Bendy will act nice to the party, but will be mean and paranoid to the user of the item.
Okay.
He will talk about how he was created by an old magic artist and how he used to have many friends like him until something happened. He will not answer what this thing is, but if they ask what happened to his friends, they will answer with, "Our creator lied to us."
Okay.
Bendy will hang around with the party until the wand runs out of charges. He will then reappear when it is activated again. This is based on Bendy and the Ink Machine, which is something I'm not familiar with, but I imagine it's a cartoon or something.
Yeah, I'm not too sure.
I probably should have done a little bit of research on this, but regardless, I think this is definitely an interesting item.
I like it a lot. I like the wet and sticky furniture that might hurt you.
Might come to life and attack you. Yes, I think that's really good.
That is fantastic.
And contrary to a lot of the other items that turn out to basically be cursed on this podcast, I think the chance of it being evil or whatever is low enough that I think it's still worth using.
Right. 5% chance. That's just rolling a 1, basically.
Basically, yeah.
So, I mean, that's good odds.
Yeah.
It's good odds and very useful.
I think that's pretty cool. I think it's just fun. And then I'm sure the DM could have a lot of fun with Bendy and his his dark past that he is unwilling to elaborate on.
Bendy's dark past.
Yes. So there's some potential there. I think that's really cool. And
I love magic items that create stuff.
Yes, definitely.
Just anything that can make stuff, especially when it's mundane, like furniture.
Yes.
Like, you can find ways to use furniture in more than just like, oh, we need somewhere to sit. Like, okay, like I'm gonna make a bench so that then we can get across this chasm or something like that. Like use it in some way, more inventive ways. You can make like a cool fort out of the wet sticky pillows.
Yes.
Of like a couch or something.
I mean, it doesn't really say how big the object can be. In theory, you could make an actual fort.
Sure.
Maybe. I don't know.
I mean, it does say furniture. So, but I mean, like, you know, there's some pretty big pieces of furniture that you can draw.
Yep.
And then, I mean, being able to just draw a monster that hangs around for a day.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
That is pretty cool.
I mean, like, you could have tons of uses for that. I mean, and then like, and it goes up, what, a quarter of your
quarter of the party level.
So I mean, like, once you get high enough level, you can probably find some pretty neat creatures to draw, so that you can, you know, use their abilities for stuff.
I'm a little curious if by monster does it include like humanoids? Like, could you draw a kobold?
Sure.
Could you draw a human? And if so, like, how intelligent is it? Is it an actual person? Or what if you do draw an actual person?
Ooh. Like, yeah, you draw the likeness of somebody else. Like, is it, like, does it act like that person?
Does it know anything that they know?
Oh, that's interesting.
I think we just found a way to break the game with this thing.
I mean, that's a cool idea for the DM to run with.
Yeah.
Like, if a DM's going to use that, like, what if they did draw somebody else to like, you know, try to fool somebody? Or like, if they're trying to disguise them, like, yeah, they're black and white, but, you know, what if it's dark out and they can't really tell? Or you throw clothes on them so that at least their clothing is colored.
Right.
So, you know.
And here's an idea just for a way that somebody could use this. Let's say, again, assuming you can draw people, let's say like the party fighter, his wife died.
Okay.
Was like killed a long time ago, and he misses her so much that every day he draws her.
Yeah.
And maybe he's not that great of an artist, so like doesn't really look like her, but like he does it every single day, so that in the hopes that someday he's able to draw her just right, so that it'll be like she's back. I don't know.
Right.
I think I got a little bit too melancholy.
No,
with this.
I like that. I was thinking something along the same lines of like, it's like, what if they draw a person and then they were like, hey, this person's pretty cool, and so like they try to draw them again, but like can't get it just right again, and they're like, no, it's not the same. And so they spend the charges over and over trying to get the same person back.
Yeah.
And like not realizing that like is it a new entity every time? If they draw it the same way, is it the same person? Do they have the memories?
Oh, but then I just realized, like, if the guy was drawing his wife, 1 out of every 20 times, like, she would be evil and attack him. Oh my goodness.
That's cool. I like the story.
Well, yeah. So I think this is a really cool item. Yeah. I really like this.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that'll do it for items. If anybody wanted to submit items for the Dragon's Hoard or to submit questions for us to discuss, Jeff, where would they do so?
They could probably do that by sending us an email at interpartyconflict@gmail.com.
All right.
All right. Our first question comes from Thomas on Reddit, and he asks, have you ever used a map for a dungeon that was intentionally drawn to be a maze or labyrinth? How did you go about making it, or did you use a pre-made one?
I'm going to say right here at the beginning, before I get into any details, that mazes don't work in D&D.
Surprisingly, when you first told me that earlier, I was like, that can't be right, because mazes are just so, like, it's such an iconic thing to have a dungeon that's a big maze or a labyrinth or stuff.
Come on, it's half of the name of the movie, the hit Tom Hanks movie Mazes and Monsters, that portrays D&D in such a great light.
Sure. But no, you're right. Like, it's really tough to not make it more confusing or boring. I don't know.
Because, like, okay, let me sort of describe why I think the mazes don't work.
Mm-hmm.
If you were in an actual maze, you might be able to tell where you might be able to keep kind of an idea of like what direction you're heading in, or like maybe you could, walk with your hand on the wall or whatever. Like, if you're going through a maze, it's going to be confusing, but there are certain things that you can do in your own head that are hard to put into words, just to give you an idea of how you think you are progressing through this maze.
Yeah.
If you're playing a game like D&D, there are 2 ways that you can handle a maze. Number 1, you can do it completely through description.
Mm-hmm.
Let's try this. Okay, Jeff, you are walking through a maze.
Uh-huh.
You come into the maze, and there are 3 passages, 1 to the left, 1 in front, and 1 to the right.
Okay.
Which one do you go through?
I go down the left path.
Okay. You go down the left path. When you go, it curves to the right a little bit, And now there are 4 passages. One like way to the left, one a little bit less to the left, one kind of to the right, and then the other really to the right. Which one do you go down?
I'm going to go to the very right.
Okay. Now you get to another room, and there are 3 passages, one to the left, one a little bit less to the left, and then one that's like straight ahead. Basically, what I'm trying to get at here is that describing a maze is going to be really, really hard. It's really hard for the player, for the listener, to do anything with the information that they're given, because they don't know, is this a right angle? Is this, does it look like this connects to the previous room that I was in?
Sure.
And, the DM can answer those questions, but like, if they were there in person, they would be able to tell those things much more easily, and it would be less confusing to actually be in the maze.
Right.
So it can be more confusing, and like, assuming everything is like right angles and whatnot, that's a little bit easier. But let's say you're trying to describe like a mine or a cave that is kind of labyrinthine in the way it's set up. Like, it's going to be so hard to get across what the players are seeing and have it be intelligible at all.
Yeah.
So it's going to be really, really hard to let the player use the knowledge that their actual character would have. In the end, I'm sure you would end up just devolving into, okay, well, I make a skill check. I make like an intelligence check.
Right, yeah.
And at that point, why not just have it be skill check based to begin with?
Sure. Yeah, or like there's plenty of spells that can help with finding your way through mazes and stuff like that too, and divination spells, things like that. And
so the alternative, rather than doing it all through verbalization, would be to just draw out a map. And then that doesn't work, because then the players can just look down at the map and then they can be like, oh, okay, we're right here.
Yeah.
I want to get to right here.
Right.
So it's not going to work either way. Either it's going to be too confusing, or it's going to be too plain and easy to look at. So,
I mean, and even if you're working with a map and you're like drawing it on as they like go through it, like that's still a lot of effort.
Yeah, that's going to take so long, because every time the players move somewhere, okay, the DM has to look at his notes, be like, okay, where are they on this map? Okay, they're right here, and then look at the map again, then look back at his notes, look back at the map. Okay, and then he's going to draw something on, and then, oh crap, 2 rooms ago, I drew that room wasn't quite long enough. Now it doesn't fit with what I had in my notes. It's just going to end up being so confusing.
Yeah.
Like, what the heck? let me tell you something that I think is sort of relevant. In the game Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Okay, yeah.
There are 3 mazes in the game. And the first time I found one of these mazes, there is a map. There's a map in the game that you can zoom in and even get like pretty good resolution on like what the map is you're looking at.
Yeah.
So when I first saw one of these mazes, I was like, oh, this isn't going to be hard at all, because I can just look at the map of the maze.
Right, yeah.
But then I realized the map that you're looking at in the game is not actually representative of what you are going through in the game, like in the actual 3D world.
Yeah.
Because there might be what looks like a wall when you're looking at the map, but in the game, there's a passage that goes through that wall.
Right, it'll be like a tunnel under, or you find like a ladder that goes up and then through another wall.
Exactly,
or something like
yeah.
that. And there's a lot of passageways that are blocked off by other obstacles that aren't part of the structure.
Right. So basically what that is showing is that maps, they know that maps don't work when you're dealing with a maze.
Right.
So the only way to do it is to have the 3D world be different than the map.
Right.
Now in D&D, you don't have the luxury of having a 3D computer generated world.
I mean, I think in that sense, you could basically be give your players a map, a misleading map right off the bat.
That's true.
In Shackled City, we talked about Jizada Rune earlier when we were discussing this being sort of like it
is kind of meant to be a bit labyrinthine.
Yeah, and like because there's a lot of like dug passages that aren't like you get a map of it, but it's like an incomplete map, and there's a lot of passages that have been dug by the current residents of it.
Yeah.
And so, like, you do get kind of confused and you have to kind of draw in the spaces in the map and, like, mark, there's locked doors that you have to find keys for and things like that.
And there are times where, like, you see a door and you're like, oh, well, on the map, there's no other entrances aside from this door. We don't have the key. we're not going to get in unless we have the key. But then later on, they find, there's like a little tunnel somebody dug through the wall, and it leads into that locked room.
Right.
And then it turns out that the key is inside that locked room for some reason.
Jerks. But I mean, like, yeah, it could be like, you can still have a maze and not have it be like, you don't have to be describing every little tiny, every corridor and every twist and turn. You could just give them a misleading or simple map of it that like somebody gave them, or like maybe like half the map or something like that.
Yeah.
Just to kind of, just so you don't have to go, you have something to go on,
Sure. I'll get to how I think you should deal with this in just a minute, but I just want to say, like, I have tried to use mazes in the past. There was, in the second adventure of the Age of Worms. This is our obligatory Age of Worms reference for this episode. In the second issue of that, you're in this dungeon that's like 3 smaller dungeons that are all connected. I'll get this right out in the open. It's not a very good adventure. Of all of the adventures in that adventure path, it's like clearly the weakest, and a lot of people whole hog just take it out and replace it with another concurrent adventure that came out in Dungeon Magazine.
I mean, I so far don't remember what you're talking about.
It's fine. Basically, there's these 3 other dungeons you can go to, and like there's a whole lot of issues with the fact that how close they are in proximity, but whatever. One of the 3 is just a big maze and then like a boss fight right after the maze. And I'm pretty sure when I ran it, I kind of just cut out the maze part and was like, okay, you guys are just in the room with the boss.
Okay.
Just because it's, like I said, it's so hard to do. Mm-hmm. I would say there's a couple different solutions to using a maze. Number one, you could make it entirely skill-based. You could make it just a bunch of rolls with some descriptions, make it kind of like in 4th edition, there were skill challenges.
Okay.
Where you had to succeed on a certain number of skill checks before you failed a certain number. So like you had to succeed 4 times before you failed 3 times or something like that. And then the way that it worked in 4th edition was if there would usually be like 1 or 2 skills that the DM intended. So like, let's say you were tracking someone. Tracking someone was a skill challenge. Mm-hmm. You would make like a survival check or like a perception check or something. However, if somebody had a good reason why they could use another skill check, like for example, let's say they have, I don't think this is a skill anymore. Let's say they, in like 3rd edition terms, they had like architecture and engineering as a skill. Maybe they could make the argument, I think I should be able to use this instead of a perception check because I'm able to recognize bits of masonry or whatever.
Sure, yeah, you can look at a piece of the structure and be like, oh, this is obviously intended for one thing or another, and you'd be like, we should probably go that way.
Exactly. So like the way the skill challenges worked, you could use other skills if you could make a good enough argument as to why you should.
Yeah.
So I think something like that, something more free form and less nitty gritty would work better for a maze. Mm-hmm. If you don't want to necessarily run an actual maze, but you do still want the players to feel confused with their surroundings. Like you mentioned, the Shackled City's Jadaroon adventure. Mm-hmm. It's this big, huge dungeon that is supposed to be very, very confusing. Something that I did for that I've done in other campaigns as well. Personally, I like to use a battle mat. So I have like a big like 1-inch square grid, like a big grid of 1-inch squares that I use for combat. I use for drawing out rooms and so on and so on. Not everybody uses these, but if you do, that makes dungeons kind of less scary because like if you're drawing out the rooms as you go, you either have to constantly be erasing the rooms you've already been through, or you just have the whole dungeon drawn out. And then, it's like the drawing of a maze. The players can just be like, we're here. We need to go there, or we need to go back to here. It's not really, there's no like feeling of claustrophobia. Mm-hmm. So what I do instead, I use the grid, but what I do is I have a whole bunch of like transparent sheets of plastic. You can get like, when you were in high school or middle school, the teacher would like have the little projector where it would just be like a light. They would put up clear sheet of plastic, and then they would write on it with dry erase markers.
Yeah, they had like the graphs and stuff.
Yeah.
Although keep in mind that we're in the era of projectors and touchscreens.
That's true.
Digital projectors.
That's true. Which if you're using like a digital projector, there's so many ways to do this. What I'm describing.
Right.
But if you're going for something lower tech, here's what you can do. You can buy those transparencies, or you can even, if you buy like the little plastic sheet covers, like you can buy like binder sheets, like sheets of plastic. You can put a sheet of paper in the
yeah,
middle.
of course.
Get those and then just cut them so that each one becomes 2. So then you have a ton of just clear sheets of plastic. Then set those down on the battle mat before the session. Draw out each individual room on one of these. If the room is really big, you might have to use several of them, which can be kind of annoying. But what you want is to eventually have every room in modular format. So like you can just grab that room, slap it down. The players are now in this room. Take out all of the other rooms. And that way at any given point, the players can only see the room that they're in.
Yeah.
Maybe you might have it connected to the room they were just in if they're like standing in the doorway or something. But at any given point, you want the players to only be able to see that room. You might even, if there's like a hallway, don't even bother drawing out the hallway. Just tell the players, you left the previous room, you walked down a hallway, now you're in this room. That way, unless the players are taking intricate notes or like drawing a map of their own, they don't necessarily have a great picture in their head of what this whole complex looks like. They can't necessarily say, well, the hallway we just passed through was big enough for that room that, we saw earlier on. So therefore that room is right there. So they don't necessarily know exactly where everything fits together, which I think is a bit more realistic.
Sure. So
if you do that and you make it so the players can only see what room they're in, they might even get turned around and forget where they are, forget what direction they're facing. I mean, if your players get upset about that, I'm sure you can have them make checks or whatever to figure out what direction they are facing. But
make an intelligence check. You came from that way.
Yeah. So I just think it's really cool if you can get that feeling of claustrophobia or that feeling of being turned around like in a maze while in a dungeon, because that's hard to do. So if you can find a way to do that, and if you do like what I was saying, I think you can do that, and I think it can add to your game a lot.
Yeah, that's definitely a good way to do it. I wonder if they make like big sheets of that stuff.
Like, probably somebody does.
Yeah, like it doesn't necessarily have to be like an 8x11 ones, but like big sheets, and then you can just like cut out those shapes of the rooms and stuff like that. And you definitely want to like number them and everything too. Just
definitely.
But yeah, you've definitely used that before with us, and it always seems to work out pretty well.
Yeah, it is a lot of work. Like you do have to draw out all the rooms ahead of time, and then you got to keep them in order. And
and like we probably didn't even explore half of the ones that you drew out.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So but there's always that chance of stuff you have planned out not even getting used.
Yeah,
because I mean you want the players to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
Unless you're railroading them like crazy, they might not find every single room that you prepared for them.
Sure. Yeah. So that basically, I don't think mazes or labyrinths really work as people want them to, as the writers of all these adventures desperately want them to. But there's ways to get that same kind of experience without using an actual map of a maze.
Yeah. So they don't work in the traditional sense, I guess,
right.
But yeah,
which I mean that's just kind of the flaw with the medium. It's not going to be perfect. Not everything that works in fiction or works in like a video game works in D&D. I would love, what I think would be awesome? This would be so much work. But what I would love is if a DM made a maze in Minecraft or something like that, and then said, okay, your characters, you have to find your way through the maze in the game.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? That is a great idea, actually. And I'm sure people because I've definitely thought of this before of like how can you use Minecraft to illustrate what's going on in D&D?
Yeah.
I meant like it could be a maze, and then like you just have whoever's like the characters move the character in Minecraft to the next corner in a room, and there'll just be like a number on there that you then correspond to whatever
Like if there's like a monster in the maze, there's a big number 5, so then the DM knows, okay, stop at this point. Now you guys, roll initiative. There's a monster.
Yeah. So then you fight the monster, and then they can then explore the room and be like, okay, let's go down this one.
That's really cool.
That's not a bad idea.
I've also, going off the using Minecraft to represent D&D, I've thought it would always be really cool if the players had like a home base or something to build that home base in something like Minecraft.
Oh, sure.
I just think that would be really cool.
Yeah, now I want to do that. Now I want to play Minecraft with D&D. I'm sure there's someone has to have made a mod or something for Minecraft that,
sure.
that allows, because there's adventure mode in Minecraft where somebody can go in creative mode and create a map and then like go and then have people play through it on adventure mode, which is you can't normally like just break everything. Like you're only allowed, you have very limited things you're allowed to do. You can only interact with like buttons and switches and stuff for the most part. So people will make adventure maps where it is just like you go, you try to go through a maze or there's like a puzzle or something you'd find. So like, there are plenty of adventure maps out there, but I wonder if there's a mod that is more along the lines of like, trying to use Minecraft to make a like D&D map or dungeon or something.
Yeah, I'm sure there's probably been people that have done it. That's really cool.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that.
Minecraft's coming out for the Switch.
Oh yeah. Oh sure. Of course it is.
Yeah,
it's going to be on every platform they can possibly get it on.
It's not going to be infinite like actual Minecraft.
Right.
The Wii U Minecraft was like relatively small. This is supposed to be like however many times bigger than the Wii U version.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's still not infinite.
Yeah. The console versions are a lot more limited. Not crazy limited, but it's not it's not as unlimited as the PC version.
Yeah. Enough about Minecraft. I just don't think mazes really work. So try to find some other way to have the same experience.
Yeah, gotta get creative with it.
Yeah.
Our next question comes from Nomad47 on Reddit, and they ask, do you think the 5th edition Wizard's Familiar in conjunction with the help action is too powerful, particularly with an owl familiar? Now
I think this is our first like really rules specific question.
Right, yeah.
Because this is in regard to a very specific build setup in 5th edition.
Yeah, I had to have Gabe explain this one to me because I wasn't familiar with it.
I have a video that explains how it works. I'll put in the show notes. But basically, in 5th edition, if you have a familiar, which anybody...
Is it a first level spell?
It's a first level spell.
If you allow feats in 5th edition, which I think isn't feats is a variant rule.
It is technically a variant rule, yeah.
But anyway, like if somebody can take a feat, there is a feat in there that basically gives you a first level spell of any map. You get a cantrip.
Yeah.
You might get like 2 cantrips and a first level spell.
I think you're right, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean like anybody could get one technically.
Yeah. So without feats,
sure.
I believe the only people who can normally get that are sorcerers, wizards, and warlocks. Warlocks can take a pact ability that gives it to
although
them.
I don't know if they would be able to get the owl.
I think you can. I think you can get all the normal familiars, plus you can get like an imp, a quasit, or something else.
Pseudo dragon, I think?
Maybe, yeah. So anyway, if you get a familiars act on their own turn. They have their own like movement speed. They also have their own action.
Mm-hmm.
However, either they can't attack, or they can only attack if you spend your action to let them attack, or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Basically, they have an action, but they can't. They're not going to be fighting.
Right. Yeah. They're not a fighting unit.
Yeah. They have really low AC and they have really low hit points. So if you wanted them to get into combat, they would probably get killed.
Yeah.
But somebody figured out that you can have your familiar use the help action in 5th edition. So what that does is it's an action that you use when you're adjacent to anybody. So like you could have them use it on you. You could have them use it on your ally. And when you do it, you use up your action, and in return, the person you use it on gets advantage on their next attack roll, or to like a skill check or something. But you can use it on like the fighter, and then the fighter gets advantage on his next attack roll against the target that you choose. Now, that in and of itself is, that's okay. Any person, any player character can do that because you're giving, it's no problem. You're giving up your action to give somebody else advantage. With a familiar, it's a little bit more powerful because the familiar probably isn't going to be doing very much with their action in combat.
Sure.
It gets especially crazy when that familiar is an owl, because an owl has flyby attack. They also have a very high movement, a very high fly speed.
Sure.
So what that means is that technically speaking, the owl can start like 20 feet away from the enemy. It can fly up to the fighter, use its action to give the fighter advantage on its next attack, and then fly away. And at no point is it in danger. It's not going to provoke an attack of opportunity because of flyby attack.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then it's not in melee range anymore. So literally every round, you could be giving the fighter advantage on every one of his attacks.
Sure.
Which is very powerful.
Yeah.
Now, some people have issue with this. Like, the question here is it too powerful?
Right.
Well, I don't know. I don't really think so. I think that it is powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that the developers meant for it to happen.
Sure.
Because this it's a combination of familiars, which are traditionally not really used in combat because of how much of a liability they are.
Right.
Combined with the help action, which I don't think many people are using very often. It's, I'm sure it's an option sometimes when the enemy has really high AC. So like,
yeah,
you're not going to hit it. If you can give somebody else a better chance of hitting it, the guy who does a lot of damage, give him a chance to hit it, then, that's probably a better use of your action. But then you take that action and you combine it with familiars, which aren't, like I said, probably aren't used very often. And this is a weird little quirk of the rules that you can use the help action and then move away, and there's nothing stopping them from still gaining that advantage.
Yeah, there's nothing in the rules that says that you have to remain adjacent to them.
Exactly. And I mean, like, I'm sure some people might feel like that goes against the idea, their idea in their head of what the help action is. Yeah. I'm sure there's ways to describe it so that it makes perfect sense. But again, I don't think that was intended. Mm-hmm. Whether that's a problem or not, that's up for debate. But like, yeah. I think it's pretty safe to say the developers probably didn't intend for this to be, for these things to be used in conjunction.
Yeah. It's two overlooked features,
yes,
put together to make something that is on the powerful side.
Yeah, it's definitely useful. That being said, I don't think it's going to break anybody's game.
Yeah, I agree.
Very similar to what we were saying, as a con, like rather than a pro, this is a con of the tieflings being able to fly that I complained about at length several episodes ago, is that in a lot of encounters, it's not going to be advantageous, for example, for a tiefling to fly. If you're fighting enemies with ranged attacks, you're probably not going to have your owl go and give the fighter advantage because one of the enemies with ranged attacks, they're just going to shoot the owl. Mm-hmm. So in that case, you're not going to be using it.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that's a balancing factor because, again, you're just not using it. You're not taking a penalty. You just, you don't get to use that ability.
Right, yeah.
Also, if you're facing several enemies, there's definitely a possibility that one of the other enemies might just, ready an action or something to attack the owl or whatever. And I guess even in just about any round, the enemy could, even if it was just one enemy, the enemy could ready their action. But, if the DM wants to get around it, there's ways to get around it.
Yeah.
I don't really think it's going to unbalance anything.
Yeah. I feel like if it's somebody who basically made a character specifically to exploit this, then you can be like, all right, well, obviously this is something that they're going to be exploiting, and in that case could break the game a little bit. You could just rule it in they have to remain adjacent.
Yeah. I think that's the easiest fix for this. If you don't like it, just say if you're going to use the help action, if you're no longer adjacent to the person you're helping, then they don't get the benefit anymore. Yeah. I think that is perfectly reasonable.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would be, unless they were hoping to cheese this particular rule, I don't think anybody's going to be upset by that ruling. I would blame nobody for doing that because I think that's probably what the intent of the rule was to begin with.
Probably. And even if you don't go that route, like, I feel like, yeah, if it's not somebody who's just trying to completely cheese it out, like I think it's a cool idea. Like, it's smart. It's a smart use of two things that no one's like.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even know about the help action. Like, and I know about familiars, but I always overlook them because they're just familiars.
Right.
What are they even used for beyond this in 5th edition? Exactly.
I don't know.
like it's like, okay, wow, a use for a familiar. I'm all for it. You know. But again, if it does seem like the player is abusing it, or you feel like the player is going to abuse it in some way, maybe just give it that little, okay, they have to remain adjacent, and then in that case, they're going to be a little bit more danger. Like, but the enemy might not even target it anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you do say that they can only use it while they're adjacent, there's still ways to use that as the player. You're a wizard or something. Once you get invisibility, you can make your familiar invisible, and they're not attacking.
Very true.
So they still have it. Now, I think that is not at all unbalanced because the wizard is, number one, using up another resource,
right?
A second level spell. Also, it's a concentration spell, so like the wizard can only have one concentration spell going at a time. So I think that if you were to make it so you had to stay adjacent, and then the wizard just said, okay, fine, I'll just cast invisibility, I think that's perfectly in line power-wise, because you're still able to do it, but it's still costing you something.
Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely ways to balance this if you feel like you need to.
Yeah, but I don't think it's unbalanced.
I think I just like it thematically enough to where I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, like so like the owl swoops in and like distracts the enemy or something, like dive bombs them or something.
It's like you have a trained hawk whose entire purpose is just to swoop in and just get the bad guy's attention, so then the fighter can, stab them when they're not looking.
Although mechanically that's not really what's going on, because help is something that it basically is casting on the player, on the ally, right?
I believe so, yeah.
But I mean, but you could always theme it.
Yeah,
It's like, he swoops in and dives bomb the enemy, so it swats at the bird, and you get a chance to get an advantage.
If it's invisible, the enemy doesn't see an invisible bird fly straight into their face.
Right, yeah.
And,
they feel wings batting at their face suddenly.
Exactly.
And they get very confused.
Yeah.
But pair that with like a rogue.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
That is a good point. I think that's
definitely a rogue with a feat. A rogue with the feat to have the find familiar spell.
Yeah.
So Gabe, I want to play 5th edition. I'm gonna play a rogue. We're gonna use the feats variant, and I'm gonna be a I forget the name of the feat, but
it's like magic initiate or something.
Yes, that is. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the one. But yeah, you get a first level spell and a couple cantrips.
I mean, I'm not against that. I would actually love to run a campaign where somebody does that to see how I feel about it in practice.
Sure.
But looking at the numbers on the page, looking at the book, I think it probably won't ruin anybody's game.
Yeah.
There are some times where it's probably going to be really powerful, but like you were saying, it's too overlooked mechanics that,
and I think at a certain point, I think it feels more overpowered because it's such a low level thing that you can do.
That's true. Yeah.
Later on, there's going to be so many fireballs going off and things like that like having a owl with 5 hit points around, it's not going to last very long. In fact, you probably won't even summon it half the time. But at a certain point, because it costs 10 GP to summon, which I guess later on won't be that big of a deal.
It stays with you it stays with you forever,
right?
Sorry to interrupt. There's one cool thing that the spell does, though, that when you summon a familiar, you can spend an action to basically banish your familiar to a pocket dimension, so that they won't be targetable by enemies.
And then can you bring them back in an action?
Yeah. I think so. I think it's an action. Yeah.
Okay.
So you won't have to cast the spell again and thus spend the hour casting and the 10 GP unless the familiar dies, or unless you just want a different familiar.
Yeah. But even still, there will eventually be plenty of fights where you probably just won't even have him around because he's gonna die.
Or just the enemies have so many things at their disposal that it's not feasible to do it anymore.
So early on, sure, it might be, but that's just players getting creative, I feel like.
And I think if a player comes up with something this creative, you shouldn't just right off the bat discourage it.
Yeah.
You should say, let's find a way to make this fun for both of us.
Because a lot of times at first level, you just don't have a lot of options.
I know.
And this is somebody finding an option, and I like it. I think it balances itself out, at least eventually when the levels go through.
Yeah.
Because having advantage is a big advantage because you're rolling 2 dice and taking the higher one. Right. Although Gabe can tell you that it doesn't matter how many times you roll a d20, it's probably going to be single digits.
Yeah, 2 3s, still just a 3.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah, I am notorious at rolling poorly. So,
our next question comes from Zeus and his beard, Mr. and his beard.
Yeah, Mr. and his beard is my father.
Well, he writes to us on Reddit. How do you handle character death? What's your philosophy? Have you ever killed a character and had their player quit playing because of it?
I've never had a player quit because a character died. Mm-hmm. And I've never quit because one of my characters died.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think how many times I've ever actually killed off a player character.
I feel like if somebody's going to leave over a character dying, you'll find a way to bring that character back, because if that character was the fun for them, find a way to bring it back.
Yeah.
Like, or if it's or if you're a DM who's known for killing players, that person should probably bring an extra character sheet.
Yeah.
Them, you know?
But so your point is a good one. Like, I think my personal philosophy is that if I have no problem with player characters coming back from the dead. A lot of people do. A lot of people don't like raised dead or resurrection or whatever because they feel like it cheapens death.
Yeah, and that's understandable.
That is understandable. But I would counter that by saying that death is only cheap if you let it be cheap.
Sure.
Just because your character is no longer dead doesn't mean that death it can't have a huge effect.
Right, yeah.
In any kind of fiction, I would say that I'm fine with characters coming back from the dead as long as, number one, there is a cost.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that is like they have to come up with a lot of money or they have to go on a quest or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is, if as long as there is some kind of a cost, that's fine with me. So like Raised Dead does cost a bunch of money, and then Resurrection costs more, and then True Resurrection costs even more than that. So as long as, I mean, at higher levels, that's going to be less of an issue.
Sure.
But then, there's ways at higher levels to make people harder to come back from the dead. You can always like disintegrate them or cut off their head or put, bind their soul or something.
Or you could just be sending them to another plane or something.
Yeah, there are fates far worse than death. Yeah. Let's not forget that. So, number one, as long as there's a cost, I'm okay with it. Number two, think of it this way. If you in real life, if you were, let's say you didn't die, because, in real life you can't come back from the dead. If you were put in a coma, or like you had a near-death experience or whatever,
mm-hmm.
you probably wouldn't just hop out of the hospital bed once you've recovered and be like, okay, I'm going to go back to exactly what I was doing right before I almost died.
Right, yeah.
I've mentioned in a previous episode, I had a character that died, and it forced me to completely rethink how I was going to play the character.
Sure.
Because I decided that like that character would not be the same personality-wise after he came back from the dead, because dying is not only was he dead, he remembers the physical act of dying.
Right. You still got stabbed or whatever.
Yes. Like if I got, even if I didn't like go into a coma, if I got stabbed,
mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be the same person afterwards because I would have remember being stabbed.
Right. Exactly. It has effects on you.
Yeah.
The whole dying thing.
Like, I have a friend, I won't mention his name or anything, but I have a friend that was shot a long time ago. And he has told me like that had a huge impact on his life. I've asked him like, what was it like knowing you almost died? And he told me like, it's a very sobering thought.
Sure.
I think he was shot twice, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh boy.
That either one of those could have ended his life.
Sure.
And like, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
So imagine if he actually did die and then came back from the dead. There's so much to that, that I can't see someone coming back from the dead and being the same person they were before.
Right.
So as long as, number one, there's a cost, a cost to actually bring them back from the dead. And then number two, if there's a cost to the character, if the character is, if the impact of their death is pronounced, that is 100% dependent on you and not dependent on the rules of the game.
Right.
Now, the different editions of the game have dealt with death's impact in different ways.
Sure, yeah.
In third edition, anything but a true resurrection made your character lose a level.
Yeah. Which
actually kind of really sucked. Like, nobody liked that.
Speaking of fates worse than death.
Yeah, losing a level. That's
just terrible.
That's awful. Fourth edition, I think, did something similar to what fifth edition does. But what fifth edition does is when you come back from the dead, you basically have, I think you have a -4 to all D20 rolls, which decreases by 1. It goes to -3, and then -2, -1, and then 0. Each time you take a long rest, which I think is actually a little bit light as far as impact goes. Because especially because you're probably not going to come back to life during an adventure.
Yeah, it's going to be something between adventures usually.
Yeah, and like, how many adventures do you have where you don't have at least 4 days of downtime? But whatever, the DM can always say that has to be like during long rest during the session.
Yeah, because you're going to be exerting yourself or something. So
yeah.
you got to get your sea legs back. Basically.
Exactly. So like there's definitely ways to mechanically make it impact the character, but really I think it's just a thematic thing. It's going to have as much or as little impact as you, the DM, let it have.
I had an idea about this earlier where. Because Gabe had explained his character that he had that died and came back and like was changed for it.
Completely changed, yeah.
I think it'd be a cool idea if, and this might even be just like a chance to based on like your character stats or something like that. Like if they can will themselves through the experience, they'd be fine. But they might even like have to change their class or something like, or like start taking multi-class levels because they're just different now.
Yeah.
Like because they've maybe when they died, they saw like the heavenly plane of whatever and are changed completely by it. And now
they're a cleric.
Yeah. Now they want to be a paladin or a cleric or something, you know, like.
Or in the campaign that I don't remember how much of this I went into in the previous episode, but the character I had died. Another character died. Our mutual friend Jamie was playing in that same campaign. His character was a paladin, and his character also died. And his character also came back from the dead. And the way that he decided his character was going to deal with it was when his character died, his character saw no afterlife.
Oh, sure.
And his faith was completely shaken. Yet, oddly enough, he still continued to gain his paladin powers.
Right. So yeah, that.
So then he had to ask, where are my powers coming from, if not from this afterlife that I was sure I was going to see when I died? And so for the rest of the campaign, it was a relatively short campaign. It had a definite end. It didn't end prematurely, but it ended like it was written to end fairly early. And after the campaign was over, Jamie decided that his character was going to become a druid. He had previously been a paladin of the goddess of civilization and went full 180 and became a druid who worshipped nature and the world instead of civilization.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I don't know if I would ever say that a player would be forced to take another class, but I think the idea of a player choosing to take another class is so cool.
Yeah.
And there's so many ways that can articulate. Like you were saying, they saw the afterlife, now they're a cleric. Or they didn't see the afterlife, now they're no longer a cleric.
Right.
Might even be something like they saw that they are fundamentally weak. Now they became a fighter because they want to train themselves to be more physically strong.
That's cool.
Or part of their mind was broken by the fact that they died and now they're a barbarian so they can go into rage. Or they realized, holy crap, why do I care about the well-being of others? I'm going to become a rogue. I'm going to start backstabbing people.
Yeah, or like in dying, they experience some great truth of the universe and now understand it better and can cast spells now or something.
Yeah.
Like, you know, want to learn how to cast spells and things like that.
Or when they were dead, they were floating in a void and a voice spoke to them.
Ooh.
And now that voice is their patron and they are now a warlock.
Very cool.
There's so many ways to make this really, really cool.
Yeah, so your character's coming back, but it's still affecting the game, and it's not like death doesn't have a meaning. Death has honestly a greater meaning than just, oh, your character's gone. It's like, no, your character's different.
Yeah. I would never tell a player that they couldn't bring their character back from the dead because, like, that's not fun.
Yeah, sure.
They're playing this game because they enjoy playing the character that they want to. Unless they want to pick a new character,
right?
I'm not going to tell them, sorry, because of this random dice roll, you don't get to have the fun you were expecting to have. So, just find some way to make it meaningful in the story, but don't ever tell your player like, no, you can't do that because, just because of rules.
Yeah. You don't want to be killing off characters to get rid of players,
Yeah.
I just see if the group is too big to where you have to kill people off to get them to leave, maybe you should start with smaller groups, I guess. But I don't know. Like I feel like if it's not fun for the player to have their character dead, find a way to bring it back. And if I never liked the lose a level rule.
Yeah.
The resurrection sickness sort of thing, that makes sense. Yeah, maybe make it last for a little bit longer.
Maybe. And I mean, depending on your group.
Yeah. But there's a lot of ways to make it so that death isn't going to ruin somebody's game, but it's still going to be a game changer.
Because if taking risks means that the players might not be able to have fun anymore because they don't get to play their character anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's not the message you want your players to be taking risks. You want your players to be, if they weren't taking risks, they wouldn't be adventurers.
Sure.
So like, you don't want to encourage your players to not do anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I can understand someone not liking players coming back from the dead, but like I personally, my philosophy is let them do it. Just make sure that it is meaningful within the story. Now, I mentioned earlier, like I've only ever killed off a couple characters, and it's never been, it's always just been like, well, that's the way the dice
right.
With one exception, when we were in, Age of Worms, ding. I don't think I'll actually put in a ding there. In Age of Worms, I mentioned that Jay's girlfriend Meg was playing with us at the beginning of the campaign. She knew that she wouldn't be able to play with us for the whole thing because she was like going away to college or something.
Yeah.
She told me ahead of time, like, I'm going to have to leave at this time. Is there some way that we can kill off my character in a meaningful way?
Right. Yeah. Make it memorable.
And in the adventure that I mentioned earlier, the ones of the 3 dungeons, there are these 3 dungeons, and then you come back to where the 3 dungeons converge, and there was like this pool of like mud or clay or some like magical substance that once you've completed those 3 dungeons, this giant monster comes out of that, and then the players have to fight it. And when I ran that adventure, I knew that was going to be the last time that Meg was going to be able to play with us. So right before that monster got killed, I had it grab her and then like take her down with it into this pool of whatever.
Okay.
And then that actually became a driving force for Jay's character.
Sure.
Not that his character didn't have a relationship with Meg's character, but Jay was playing a paladin.
Sure.
And so the idea that like one of his teammates died because maybe in his mind, because he wasn't strong enough or whatever.
Yeah.
That was a driving force for him. And I had that pay off at the very end of the campaign. There was a point where I don't remember if I gave the whole party. Basically, I gave you guys the ability to like undo one misfortune. And Jay immediately took that ability to go back and retrieve her character from being dead. It didn't bring her to it didn't like, oh, she's been with him the whole time, but instead it made it so that like now she's alive somewhere out in the world. And I think I might have even said that like one day in Jay's travels, he met her. She didn't remember him, but he met her and he knew that she was alive and well.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I think there's so many ways to do something really cool with character death. So like, I don't know why anybody would just say, no, you can't do that. Why not find some way to make it really, really cool?
Yeah. I feel like it can sometimes be difficult because, like you said, sometimes it's just the roll of the dice and you don't even expect it.
Yeah.
Like you as a DM might not even be trying to, go for the throat, basically. You might be like pulling your punches because it's just some random encounter. And, it's just like they rolled a 1, you rolled a 20. Oh no, and like, oh shoot. Well, guess you're dead now.
Yeah.
In those moments, I feel like it can be tough to make it memorable because it is sort of just like, oh, shoot. Well,
now I have to figure out what to do.
Yeah, I guess I'll start making a new character while everybody else finishes up the encounter. I think that's the worst, actually.
That is pretty bad.
When your character dies, but the battle isn't over, so then you have to wait for everybody to do a battle, which is going to take a while because it's combat in D&D.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there thinking, okay, so now what?
Now, I've never been part of a TPK, a total party kill.
Sure.
But I imagine, wouldn't it just be the worst if you were the first character to die and then you could tell that because you were no longer there, you watched one by one the rest of the party get killed? Wouldn't that just be awful?
And then you're like the last person alive and you're really trying hard to like stay alive so that you can like maybe bring everybody back to life or something like that in some way. It's like I don't know if you've ever played like any like first person shooter games or
Counter-Strike. I think I know what you're getting at.
Yeah, yes, in a Counter-Strike game where you're the last person and everyone's watching you and judging you.
Yes, you can feel their judgment.
It's like even though they all died, so they obviously didn't do a good job either.
Yeah.
And it's like 4-on-1 and they're all watching you, hoping you would like waiting for you to mess up so they can call you noob.
I want to say that happened to me once. I was the survivor only because the entire session I had been hiding in a corner somewhere. And then it occurred to me, like, I think like the chat box was just going crazy, and I realized, oh crap, I'm the last one. They're all watching me hide.
Yeah, you don't even realize you're the only one left until somebody starts yelling at you.
Yeah. I just, one more thing I want to add is that, like you were saying, death sucks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever want to kill off a player. And I will admit there have been times where like the dice should have, somebody should have been dead, but like maybe I just kind of fudged something a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say, if possible, I want to encourage DMs out there not to fudge dice rolls. I mean, there are times where like it's the last, the battle's about to be over, and you don't want it to go south, and like, you make like, we did one less damage than I thought, or whatever.
Yeah.
There's an extent to which it's okay, but in general, I just want to encourage DMs all over the world not to fudge dice rolls if at all possible.
Yeah.
The reason being that if you fudge something here to keep a player alive and you fudge something there to keep a player alive, there's going to be a time where there's either going to be a time where you don't do that anymore, or you just never ever kill off a player even when the dice say it should happen. And, maybe the players will catch on and they'll realize, oh, maybe we're not in danger anymore. And then the game ceases being fun. More likely, there's going to be a time where you let a character die. And then you will feel guilty because you could have prevented it like you prevented it all those other times and you didn't.
Yeah, because you're giving yourself that allowance to do that, and then
the moment you stop doing it, you will feel guilt for not doing it anymore.
Yeah. So instead just make it so you just don't have that option.
Yes. As much as possible. It a rule. That's one of the reasons why I don't use a DM screen.
Sure.
When I first started playing with Chris and the other people that I played with them, I was amazed that they didn't use a DM screen. Every single die roll was right there in front of you. Anybody could see it. If the player was doomed, they knew they were doomed, but they knew it wasn't the DM's fault. It wasn't the DM being vindictive.
Yeah.
It wasn't the DM like feeling like his encounter isn't difficult enough, so he fudged something in his favor. No, those are the dice. And I, as a player, appreciate that so much. It sucks when a character dies. It sucks when, something bad happens, but you can't blame anybody because it's the dice. That's why you're playing the game. Mm-hmm. If you didn't want there to be a chance of that happening, you'd just tell a story instead.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think death it's a very important part of the game. It can suck, but it can also be so awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that'll do it for today.
Okay.
If anybody wants to submit items or questions, please email us at interpartyconflict@gmail.com. For show notes, a running list of questions asked, a list of the Dragon's Hoard items, and important links, or to download the episode, go to interpartyconflict.blogspot.com, where we have a link to our SoundCloud page. Find our Facebook page, facebook.com/interpartyconflict, or our subreddit at reddit.com/r/interpartyconflict for weekly discussion questions from me. We're also on Twitter at InPartyConflict, and we're on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, and YouTube. Please rate, review, and subscribe. I really, really appreciate the people who have given us subscriptions, who have given us ratings. It's so awesome. It's so great to have people that like our show.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
And our music is made by Boxcat Games from Nameless the Hacker's RPG. So, till next time,
may your hits be critical and your resurrections true.
There you go. You guys have a good week.
Bye, everybody.